Welcome back and thanks for joining me again. I am at Lake Vesuvius this morning in Wayne National Forest in Ohio, kind of near the Kentucky-West Virginia border. It's a beautiful Saturday morning, early May. Perfect spring morning, and I'm going to be doing part of the Lakeshore Trail and the backpacking trail today. I'm going to do a good chunk of mileage today, 10, 12 miles, I think, somewhere in there, give or take a mile or so. So I'm going to get right on the trail and get going. Here's a rough idea of what I'm going to do. I am right here at the boat dock right now. I'm going to follow the Lakeshore Trail along the side of the lake until it splits the backpacking trail right here. Take this backpacking trail up this way, all around here. I'm going to camp somewhere on this loop tonight, and then tomorrow take a little bit of the backpacking trail, but then take the Lakeshore Trail around the lake on the other side, and eventually get back to where I am right now. Lake Vesuvius is beautiful today. And it's just about an ideal spring day. It's kind of unseasonably cool for a day in May. The highs today are only going to be in the mid-50s, and the lows are going to be in the mid-30s tonight. But for me, that is ideal backpacking weather. I was out last weekend on a day hike, and it was 80-something degrees. And I was glad I wasn't backpacking that day, because that's a little bit out of my ideal temperature range. But this weekend is perfect. Probably the last cool weekend we're going to have until October, November. Wow, here's a yellow lady slipper. I've actually never seen a yellow lady slipper. I've seen pink, but I've never seen yellow. Beautiful. I'm on the backpacking trail now. I've diverged from that Lakeshore Trail, climbed a couple hills, and now I'm near the top of the ridge that overlooks the lake. Well, there's a lot of trees in the way, so there's not a whole lot of overlooking, but the lake is down that way. The hills weren't too bad. The mud was the worst part. It's definitely mud season here in Ohio. It was one of those 3 steps forward, 2 steps back situations. Very slippery mud. Not just mud, but very, very slippery, clayey mud. But it's been easy ridgetop walking since then. There are a few dogwood blossoms still clinging to the trees. They're past their peak. Most of them are on the path now. Some of them are still hanging on. Here's another spring favorite. This is the mayapple. The mayapple has a nice white flower that later in the season turns into a fruit that's edible or semi-edible. I've never tried it myself. Feels really good to be out in the woods again. I haven't been backpacking since February at Big South Fork. I had plans to. April's one of my favorite times to backpack. That early spring season when everything is just starting to leaf out and turn green. That's one of my favorite times to be out in the woods. But COVID hit and I had to put all my plans on hold for a while. I've been taking lots of little day hikes and walking almost every day at the park near my house. But nothing beats being out here, spending the night, having a long trail unspooling ahead of me. And it's still early enough spring that all of the things that I like about spring are still occurring. The earliest spring ephemeral wildflowers are gone, but we kind of have the second wave, and I've had really good luck today with the wildflowers. They've been really nice. Just one of my favorite times of year for plants in general. All the May apples and bloodroot and waterleaf and all these different kinds of ferns that are coming out right now. And also, the canopy still hasn't leafed out. The tallest trees, anyway, have not. So there's a lot of sunlight on the forest floor, which makes for nice walking, especially when it's chilly like this. It keeps me warm and keeps all those wildflowers in bloom too. One of the other great things about hiking this time of year is that I have a lot of daylight ahead of me. It doesn't get dark until about 9 o'clock. So I still have probably 7 hours of daylight, which is just great because if this was January, I would only have about 3 left. My least favorite thing about being in the woods in the spring? Ticks. And I just found my first one. It was a small one. Small ones are worse than the big ones in my opinion. Much harder to see, much harder to feel. The big ones you can usually feel and just flick off, but small ones, yeah, they get in your crotch and you don't find them until the next day. I'm at the north end of the lake now. There are a lot of stream crossings. There are a lot of streams feeding into the north end of the lake. I'm also about halfway through the day's mileage, somewhere between mile 5 and 6 right now, and I'm really starting to relax. It took a while. I guess being cooped up in the house, I was really tightly wound, and I just needed about 5-6 miles to start to uncoil a little bit and relax. But I'm really having a good time now. It feels good. It's quiet. I just passed my first backpacker of the day, which is a little bit surprising. It's a beautiful Saturday. Oh, that's sad. It must be recent because there are coyotes everywhere and they would have gotten to him. They're going to be eating him tonight. My map tells me that I'm in Aldridge Hollow now, and it told me to look out for the majestic pines. I believe I've found them. Actually, there's pines next to sycamores, which is kind of unusual. It creates kind of a nice contrast. Here's another wildflower I've never seen in the wild before. This is Jack in the Pulpit. Decided to leave the shoes off for a minute, which I guess was a good idea because the trail just became a creek. As we've moved into the warmer part of the day, I can feel the heat rising off of the trail, off of the dirt and the leaves. And I can smell it. It smells good. It smells like warm weather. I finally came out of that hollow, that floodplain. Now I'm up near a ridgetop again, into a hardwood forest. It smells good. It's hardwood forest, oak and hickory. There goes a large animal, a deer, I think. Kind of at that point in the hike where the miles don't really matter anymore. Another 5, another 10, another 2. It's all the same. And yet, coincidentally, it's also the part of the hike where I start to really look forward to a hot meal and a good log to sit on for a couple hours. Magic beans to get me through the next mile or two. This is the highest point on the trail. I'm about 400 feet above the lake. This is where the Kimball Lookout Tower used to be. As you can see, there's not much left of it now. Yeah, this trail has turned into a lot of this. I think my home for the night is in these pines. This is where I'm going to stop for the night. A nice little flat spot among the pines. I did some scouting around. Ended up walking about an extra 1.5 miles. So it's a little bit later now. I still have at least an hour and a half of sunlight, so that's not too bad. But I'm very hungry, so I'm going to multitask here. My buddy Rich made this food heat reflecting bag for me. Testing it out for the first time. I put my Mountain House meal in there. They usually cook pretty decently on their own, but I figured it couldn't hurt. I'll see what happens. They're usually a little undercooked. What this is going to be really great for, though, is when I dehydrate food and then rehydrate it out in the backcountry. So like that chili that I like to make, or some of those shredded chicken dishes, or apples. I actually have some apples with me today. I might try those in there too. Or even oatmeal. I'll probably throw my oatmeal in there in the morning too. So, thanks, Rich. Tonight's meal is beef stroganoff. It looks good. It's good. My poor shoes have had a rough time of it. This hole is just getting worse and worse today, and this mesh is just totally deteriorating. These are the Ultra Timp shoes. They've actually been great for me. I have weird feet, and so I have a really hard time finding shoes that don't hurt my ankles and my feet and then my knees. These have never given me any trouble. I've never had any pain whatsoever with these. The only problem is that they're falling apart after a year. As soon as that sun went down below the hills, it started to get cool very fast. And it's supposed to get down to the mid-30s tonight. So, a fire will be nice. I made camp at about the 10.5 mile mark on the Backpackers Trail. And then I did about a mile and a half of scouting around after I set down my backpack here. Scouting ahead just to see if there was another better campsite ahead. There wasn't, so I came back here. So if you want to include that, I did do about 12 miles today. That's right in the sweet spot for me. I had a close encounter with a coyote today. That was interesting. He was walking on the path toward me. He got pretty close, and then he saw me and took off into the woods. But I walked a little bit farther. It got to about where he had been, and he circled around and came out of the woods, crossed the path, looked at me, and then kept walking up the ridge. He stopped several times while he was walking up there to look at me. He didn't seem to be terribly afraid of me. I'll probably hear coyotes tonight. I did the last time I camped here. They were cackling all night. It's time for dessert. This magnificent brownie. I've been looking forward to this all day. Thank you, Amy. Sitting in my tent, looking at the last embers of the fire. As expected, that pine burned hot and fast. Is there a better feeling than laying down in your sleeping bag after a long day of backpacking and not having to move at all? I don't think there is. All the night animals have come out. I can hear a barred owl. I can hear whippoorwills. Poor Will. Those birds are always calling for him to be whipped. And I can also hear those coyotes. They'll probably wake me up. I still only found 2 ticks on me all day, although I wouldn't be surprised to find a couple more crawling around in my tent tonight. I'm beat. I'm ready for bed. Good night. I need to get moving before it starts raining. There's no coffee in that food bag. I don't know how I forgot it, but I don't have my coffee. That's gonna make me cranky. It's a little bit before 9 o'clock. I'm on the trail. The sun's coming out, so that's a good sign. It doesn't look like it's going to rain after all. And I wanted to get a fairly early start today because I still have quite a few miles to do. The last time I was here, in January of 2018, I think, we camped over there. It's hard to recognize it because there was snow on the ground at the time, but I'm pretty sure this is it. And I've approached it from the opposite direction. The last time I was here, I also did the trail clockwise, but instead of diverging onto the backpacking trail, I stayed on the Lakeshore trail, got to this campsite, spent the night, and then finished the loop using the backpacking trail. So, as far as I'm concerned, I've finished the backpacking trail. I've now done the whole thing between this trip and the last trip, and so instead of taking the backpacking trail out this time, I'm going to take the Lakeshore trail so that I can see the last little bit of trail here that I haven't seen yet. And that'll give us nice views of the water and maybe even a little bit less hilly. So I'm looking forward to what that has to offer. First of all, before I get to that point though, the backpacking trail and the Lakeshore trail, they run together for 0.3 miles, I think. So I'm going to finish that up and then I'm going to get onto some new trail again. The trail is really badly flooded in here. I'm gonna just give up on trying to keep my feet semi-dry, I think. There's a nest built into this cliff. Some kind of swallow, maybe? Backpacking trail complete. Now let's go finish up the Lakeshore trail. Lake Vesuvius. Not actually named after the volcano. It was named after the Vesuvius iron furnace, which was named after the volcano. This part of Ohio used to be the nation's biggest supplier of iron ore. There were a bunch of iron furnaces all throughout this area. Very few of them are left standing. I think the Vesuvius furnace might be the only one. It's at the entrance to the park. I'll go check it out before I leave. These fading yellowed leaves, these are ramps, wild leeks. They have a delicious bulb that's kind of like a leek or an onion. I've had them a couple times already this year. They're really good. I love them. Put them on burgers, put them in an omelet, put them on pizza. You can eat the greens too. The greens are good too, but I like the bulb. I'm not going to dig any of these up, even though it's very tempting. I'll leave them alone. Here's something I didn't expect to see here. These are rhododendron flowers. You don't normally see these so far north. These are amazing. I'm getting close now. You can see that boardwalk over the water in the distance. That leads back to the parking lot, and that's where I'm headed. I've reached the dam, and so I am just about done with this hike. I have another quarter mile to go or so. I'm beat. I'm going to be glad to get back to the car. Glad to go find a post-hike meal somewhere. Great hike though. I couldn't have asked for better weather. I couldn't have asked for better wildflowers. That was probably the highlight of the trip for me. The wildflowers and the solitude. There was barely anybody out here. And now I've completed the Lake Vesuvius trail system between this trip and the last one. Most of the backpackers loop finished this time, and then finished up on a little bit of the Lakeshore trail, which is a very nice section of the trail. I think I ended up doing somewhere around 18 miles. I'll have to figure it out when I get home. Very glad to have gotten out of the house though. I needed this. Needed some time in the woods. Needed some miles under my feet. I got exactly what I came out here for. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.